Welcome to your next private lesson. I apologize for kind of the lateness of this presentation, and also some additional training videos made on the Patreon channel. I've just been a little busy, as some of you know, and some of you may not. I'm the executive director for the American Council on Criminal Justice Training, and so I provide training to law enforcement, corrections, and private security, and also from time to time, to private citizens. But mainly, we specialize in law enforcement and corrections and private security. And also, I'm an expert witness. I've been doing that now for several decades, since 1988 at the Oregon then Police Academy. And so it's just been really busy. We've had training classes, both Zoom law enforcement training classes and physical training classes. And also I've gotten two new use of force cases. One, a citizen on citizen shooting. The shooting is justified. It was in self-defense, but nevertheless, the prosecutor has decided to charge him with murder. And so that should go to trial mid-November. And then also I have a case, police shooting. It's not a shooting with a handgun, it's a shooting with a taser in Idaho. And so that, again, the use of the taser was justified, but the agency decided to fire the deputy, which was ridiculous. And so that involves a lawsuit, because the two individuals that the deputy tasered is suing the sheriff's office, and so therefore they're still responsible for defending the lawsuit. And then in in November, I do a 3-day defensive tactics instructor course for private security in Kansas City, Kansas. And then I go to Casper, Wyoming, and do a cell extraction instructor course on the 8th and the 9th, I believe it is. But in between, I'm going to try to get in and get a video made of an explanation of the TORDI applications, the fighting system applications for Wansu and Seisan, so you can have a better understanding of how to do the kata and what they mean. And so we're going to talk about principles 6 and 7 today with an explanation, and I'll use the PowerPoint so it's easy for you to follow. But keep in mind, in your training, is that right now what you're doing is what's on video, which is important. You want to focus on working on the individual techniques and the kata. But as you progress, and some of you have been doing this now for some time, and so as you progress, what you want to do is you want to work the techniques in combination in the TORDI. So for an example, if let's say you're doing the TORDI move in the Nahachi Shodan, where you come across like this. Of course, as you know, this is a hammer strike, and this is a counter punch, crossbody punch. And so you need to practice that individually from the front stance, transitioning back into the horse stance, blocking and striking, or blocking and striking. And that's good, because you will need to make those techniques, automatic. But the reality is, fighting is dynamic. Combat's a very dynamic activity. And you're not going to do as you see on YouTube, what you see on YouTube with all what they call bonkai, and it's not based on anything. It's based on some guesses with people who've never done it before in real life. Even the Okinawa Masters, it's all been kind of commercialized. Every Okinawa Master is a Grandmaster and has their own organization, but they all do the same thing. They do kata with very little explanation, and what explanation they do give is called bonkai, which means they've never actually used it. They're just kind of making it up as they go. And so in reality, when you get into a combat situation, and they call it, self-defense, well, it's all combat is self-defense, because the person's trying to hurt you. But it's more dynamic. That's what the Bogo gear was all about. It was to simulate actual combat where people are actually trying to hurt you, and you're in a self-defense situation, or you're in a mutual combat situation like they were in Okinawa centuries ago. So as you practice, when you're in that front stance, what you want to do is you want to step back and block and step back and block. And maybe depending on how much room you have, you need to alternate steps moving back, doing the crescent block, and the crescent block and the crescent block, and then execute the technique because that's what's going to happen. If the way you get attacked, honestly, is just like you do it, the police officers do. It's very few police officers actually get physically attacked with warning. When I do my seminars and my instructor courses, I always ask the officers in the class, how many have been sucker punched? They all raise their hand. I said, how many of you were warned when you got sucker punched? Because what happens is they drop their guard. I come up to get your driver's license and you punch me. And that's the way it works. And that's the same way with you. Anybody who confronts you and gets in your face, they're at a very serious disadvantage because you're aware, you're prepared, especially now that you've developed some skill. And so if I'm an average person and I happen to come out of the mini mart and I get confronted by some homeless guy or some other piece of shit, no pun intended, and he says, hey, look, man, can you spare some change? I step back and say, no, man, I can't. And so he gets hostile. And when he starts to move forward, either throw a punch or grab or punt, he gets stop hit. You know how to do that. And so anytime that you get attacked, it's usually going to be either an ambush or it's going to be a confrontation. And so therefore, if it's a confrontation, you're ready to go. And you'll block, you'll move back and block because that's what you're trained to do. And so you want to make your training, as realistic as possible, but still maintaining the proper application and the proper form that you're using. So just do that as you start to progress, start to put those individual techniques in conjunction with a series of defensive blocks and defensive movement, and then end with a counterattack. And then always end with an egress out of the way after you've launched your counterattack. Person's, that you're fighting imaginary has gone to the ground, and then you egress away so it doesn't pop back up when the fight's on again and you're at a disadvantage. So that's what we're going to cover today. We're just going to cover 6 and 7, and then hopefully I'll get another video out to you. Pin on Sandan will be next, the actual kata. My wife she works for the college. This is a fairly recent job for her. She's got a master's degree in physics, and so she now works at the college. They created a position for it. It's like she's an instructional design IT specialist, and so she's working on the video training for the college. That's what she does, and she's one who has improved my videos that you watch with the music, and she likes all that stuff. And I'm glad she can do it, but she's been a little busy at work, so she hasn't got around to getting Pin on Sandan for you. And if she doesn't get it done the next couple of days, then I'll do it. It'll be a little less sophisticated, but nevertheless, you'll still see all the moves in the kata. So let's get started. And, train hard. And you'll see you in the next class. Nakamura, Okinawa Kenpo, Principle 6. An off-balance conclusion creates vulnerability. What's important as I get into this, just so you understand that whether you throw a reverse punch or a lunge punch, a front kick, or any combination of the two, you need to be in constant balance. Because as it says here, which is the explanation for the principle, a kicking leg lowered from an unbalanced position and in an uncontrolled manner makes the leg vulnerable to attack by kick or sweep. That's absolutely right. If I throw a front kick at you and I drop down, I don't put it down in a controlled manner, what will happen is when I hit the ground, and if you're ready, you'll sweep my leg or you'll kick it the minute it hits it touches down. Now, if I throw my kick and I'm in a controlled manner and I lower it down, remember it's more important to be balanced than it is to be fast. Talked about this in a principle. So when I throw the front kick, it's not how, the kick can be fast, but it needs to be controlled and put on the ground. So when I touch down, I'm in a position where I can, counterattack your counterattack and not be taken advantage of. same is true when you throw a punch. And you see this in mixed martial arts all the time. You know, mixed martial arts, you know, they're it's a sport, of course, but it is mixed martial arts in the sense that it's bad boxing with ground fighting and wrestling. And that's pretty much what it is. And so boxers, you know, and are in a position where they kind of are more full facing. But what happens is they are constantly off balance when they throw a technique. Well, they throw a kick, you'll see them throw a roundhouse kick and they'll spin around, you know, and be off balance. And if they throw a punch, it's, you know, a boxing punch, or it's a hook, or, you know, it's a right hand cross, but they're throwing all their body weight into it and they're off balance. And because boxing doesn't have any blocks, it really has very little defensive movement. And the only defensive blocks they do is cover up, which is, you know, it works well if you have a weight division and you have gloves. But if you're smaller and you don't have any gloves, you just take the impact, and it's not a very effective way to block because you take a lot of punishment. And so what they do is they run away. So when those mixed martial arts guys start to box, then they attack, the other one just kind of dances away, moves around the ring, because they don't have any blocking skills, because they haven't developed any blocking skills. And so that's why when they throw that punch, they're always off balance. You don't want to be there, because if you're off balance and your opponent is close enough to counterattack you, they'll take advantage of that because you can't recover. You cannot block off your reverse punch if you're over here, because your arm's all the way across. And so you need to be here and then you can go. And so it's very important that you're always in a position of balance at the end of your attack. Now, principle 7, can't see it very well. Sorry about that. Do not step and punch simultaneously. And you see this in sport karate, and you see it in Japanese sport karate. And what they do is they move forward as they step and punch at the same time, because the whole purpose of that is to tag the opponent and get the point. And it's not to hurt the opponent or be hit hard enough to be hurt back. And so when I step and punch at the same time, I am set up for the stop hit, because I've already committed, and then you hit me as I come in. Also, when I punch and step at the same time and you move back and block, it just creates vulnerability for me. So here I am totally committed, and as I'm punching, when you parry my block, it just redirects me off balance. So it's very important that when you deliver a straight punch, you drive in. You know, this kind of crescent step type maneuver in traditional karate is a sweep. You're not stepping. So like you do in Seisan, if you'll notice in Seisan, when your feet are like so, your lead foot's like this. When you step through to do the block, the foot turns forward and you drive forward. And so when you counterattack, that's what you want to do. You want to maintain your no height any higher than your original stance, your fighting stance. And then when you drive forward, if your right foot is back, it drives straight past your left foot directly into the opponent. And that's why you bring up your left foot after you have stepped forward. And so you're going to drive straight into the opponent, hand cocked, defensive hand out. So if you start out in a fighting stance, from here, it's going to stay the same way as I step forward. And just the millisecond before my front foot stops and I lean forward, you drive with the punch. And so that way you're never vulnerable. You always want to make sure that you're always in that balanced position, because it doesn't matter, if you're slow. If you throw the punch, it doesn't matter if your opponent blocks it. What's important is you're in balance so you can counter his attack. So that's very important. Don't step and punch simultaneously, because all you're doing is playing a game of tag, and it's not effective. In fact, it's even dangerous in real world combat.